So if you were to ask me what is the most retro looking new car you can buy on the market today, I'd gladly point you in the direction of your nearest Dodge dealership to check out the 2016 Dodge Challenger. Now this week I'm testing a Challenger Scat Pack. No, it's not filled with poo, but it is packing the biggest motor in the Challenger lineup, the 6.4 liter HEMI V8. Let's take a look and see if this latest Challenger version is worth a look if you're shopping for a muscle car. Throughout the years, I've showed you guys a couple of videos on the Dodge Challenger, especially since this third generation first came out in 2008. Now, if you remember, my first video was a 2010 Challenger RT. I followed that up later in 2013 with the Super Sport, which had the 3.6 liter Pentastar V6. Now, this time I'm showing you the motor, which is arguably the best bang for your buck in terms of power and money within the Challenger lineup. This is a 2016 Dodge Challenger Scat Pack. Now, Scat Pack, of course, doesn't sound like a particularly appealing name, although it does have a lot of heritage within the Dodge Challenger family. Now, if you guys know the Challenger name, its first generation was launched in 1970, and when Dodge reintroduced this model back in 2008, they used that version of the car, that year of the car, for the basis in terms of the design for this all-new third generation. Now, this is one of the older running nameplates in the Dodge lineup. Chrysler is planning to replace this model and the Charger with an all-new platform. Now, this Challenger dates back to when Mercedes was still a part of Chrysler, so it does share some parts with some older Mercedes products. I believe the front suspension comes from an older S-Class, while the rear suspension comes from a W211 Mercedes-Benz E-Class. Now, the car itself is a very large car. This is the largest of the three muscle cars on the market, whereas the Mustang and the Camaro has really moved more toward a sports car. This is really the only last real muscle car you can buy in America that's brand new today. Now, you can see the design of the Challenger hasn't really changed too much since it was first introduced in 2008. Chrysler has made extensive updates to the car throughout the years. 2011 we saw a new V6 engine along with a new V8. 2013 we saw a couple of updates to some of the trims and new models. And 2015 is when Chrysler really updated the Challenger. They gave us an all-new interior, the SRT Hellcat, which is the flagship of the performance line or of the lineup. It was made available, and then the Scat Pack, which represents a nice little middle ground between the Challenger lineups, has the 6.4 V8 with 485 horsepower. So basically it's the Hellcat's motor, slightly larger with minus the supercharger, which makes it a little bit more manageable. But don't be fooled by that. This car is still a pretty tail happy car. It definitely enjoys going fast in a straight line. Now, regarding the exterior, I really like the updates that Dodge has made for the 2015 model year. These 4 headlights with the LED halo rings certainly give it a very distinctive look. I love the fact that the LED running light is an amber illumination on the inner light, along with a somewhat milder white LED. It gives the vehicle a very, very brutish appearance to it. Very classic retro muscle car looks. It gets a lot of attention. Even though this car's been on the market for quite a while now, it still turns a lot of heads when it goes down the road. Now, these 20-inch wheels on my tester do come standard on the Scat Pack version. They fill out the wheel wells nicely. They are wrapped in all-season performance Goodyear tires on really skinny 245 width. Now, this car is definitely very tail happy, and I feel like Dodge did that on purpose. I imagine a lot of owners are going to put wider tires, especially at the back. This vehicle really needs it if it's going to put the power down. Now, at back, you have new taillights with LEDs. They are, again, the same shape as the car when it first was introduced in 2008. It's a very, very brutish, muscular, and masculine design. And personally, I don't think it's a very beautiful design. You may disagree with me. I prefer the more modern look of the Camaro and the Mustang, but again, looks are all subjective. This vehicle still turns heads the way a Camaro and a Mustang wouldn't, so I suspect that's one of the reasons why you may want to choose a Challenger over its competitors. But enough about the exterior. Let's take a look at the inside, since Dodge did make some updates for 2015 and see all the changes they've done. Now, most Challengers will come standard with Chrysler's Smart Key Access and push button start. Here's the key fob for the vehicle. My tester is missing remote start. You can see there's lots of empty buttons here, but nevertheless, all you have to do is keep the key in your pocket or your purse. To lock the door, you push this button. It beeps, it locks the door for you. To unlock it, you just have to touch the back here, and that unlocks the door for you. And you can see it's got an old school lift up door handle, which is very different from most of the modern cars today. Now, looking at the cabin of the 2016 Challenger, you can see Chrysler did update this significantly for 2015. If you guys remember my review of the 2010 and 2013 model, this interior is much better. The design is certainly more modern. It's got Chrysler's latest 8.4-inch Uconnect head unit. Unfortunately, my tester is a more basic model of the Scat Pack. It's missing several options to it, one of them being the leather interior. I really dislike the cloth seats in my tester. It's very scratchy. The seat for me just doesn't work. The bolstering is too aggressive. The headrest is too far back. I could never get comfortable in this seat. So I recommend really trying out this interior, seeing if you're good with the seats. I would recommend going for the leather, which gives you heated and cooled functions, along with a much more comfortable bolstering. But nevertheless, stepping inside the cabin of the Challenger, you can see here it is relatively low to the ground, not as low as its competitors, but the feeling that you get in this car is just boat. The moment you step inside, the dashboard is super long, it comes right out, and surprisingly, even though this is the biggest car in the segment, the interior to me feels a little bit on the cramped side. But again, this is a coupe. You really want to go for the Charger if you want more space. But here's the button to start the engine. All you have to do is keep the key inside and then push the brake and push the button to fire it up. Now, the last Challenger I showed you was the Super Sport with the V6. I thought it was okay. This, however, there's nothing that sounds better than a HEMI V8. Ooh, that sounds really good, and it revs really fast, so I'm super surprised when I first heard that. Now, shutting the door itself is very heavy, very long. It's basically a very old school car the moment you step inside. Now, this cabin certainly has some nice touches to it. I mean, the materials in here are relatively solid. The dash is all soft touch. It's all soft touch in this huge portion here. The door panels are also soft touch, same materials as the dash. The armrest here is leather padded, more that's scratchy cloth right here, which I don't particularly like. The window is only automatic up or automatic down for both sides. It's not automatic up. I kind of wish Chrysler just made it auto up as well. There's only 2 windows. There's a couple of trim pieces in here that I don't particularly like either. Some of the plastics in here, like the window switches, the turn signal stalk, feel cheap. This right here is for the defrost, where it blows air into the window. I don't like how it's visible there. Again, it's just all an aesthetic thing. I'm not a fan of this interior design whatsoever. I do like the steering wheel on this model. It's got the new Dodge emblem. It has nice grips, good leather. I like the actual metal paddle shifters with more steering wheel controls on the back in typical Chrysler fashion. My tester, as I said before, is missing options. It doesn't have the adaptive cruise option that you would get right here with these buttons if you decided to go with that. Now, looking at the center stack here, you can see all new center stack, large 8.4-inch Uconnect head unit. This is optional on my tester. It definitely is much improved versus the older Challengers that I showed you. Basically, here is all your different sources are down here. Apps, that brings up all of the apps you would want: Pandora, iHeartRadio, AHA. You also have the Dodge performance pages that's included with the Scat Pack model. Now, the performance control, this is what activates your launch control, which is awesome that Chrysler gave this to you. You can actually adjust where you want the optimal launch to be, and that's something that you can play around with depending on what kind of tires you put on the car. You can also change the drive mode setup to where you put it into sport mode, for example, from the button down here. You can choose whether you want the engine and trans in sport, the paddles in sport, traction control in sport or normal, and then the steering in sport. That's all really cool. go here, click on Performance Pages, and it's going to bring up an application that takes forever to load sometimes, and sometimes it wouldn't even pop up. But it is pretty cool once it loads. So when that loads up, it shows you a nice little picture of the car for the home page. It shows you your timers here, showing all your 0 to 60, your quarter mile times, which is cool. Gauges here, it'll show you auxiliary gauges like coolant temp, oil pressure. Gauges 2 will show battery voltage, air intake, trans temp, all very good information that you want to know when you're driving aggressively. G-force shows the maximum amount of lateral G's you're putting on whatever side of the vehicle. You can see it'll even save your peak distance, your peak G's. You can see there on the right side and the left side, we did 0.96 G's in one drive. That wasn't me, I promise. Engine shows basically how much output you're using. Right now, we're sitting here idling. It's not really using anything. We're in park. You know, if you start revving it up, it'll show some, you know, it's a gimmicky thing, something you can impress your friends. I don't know how you would really use that to your advantage where you're driving and everyday stuff. Now, you know, all your other sources are here. Media, Bluetooth streaming audio is here. You do not have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Chrysler hasn't introduced that yet on this particular system, but when you go to the nav screen here, it's basically like a Garmin-based navigation system, I want to say. You know, it works pretty well. It's very easy to use. It's simple. The touch controls here are very quick. So that's something that I really like with the Chrysler Uconnect head unit stuff. It's one of the best systems in the business, and I'm really glad that Chrysler has updated this, much improved over the crappy unit that you had in the older Challengers. Now, put the vehicle into reverse, and you do have a backup camera. It has trajectory, it has distance, it has rear parking sensors as well, so very nice to have. Now, speaking in which, my tester has the 8-speed Torque Flight automatic transmission. This is a new transmission that was introduced in 2015, replaced the 5-speed auto across the board, which I drove in the old models. This is much improved. We'll get into the test drive later on. You can see here there's more buttons and knobs here, your volume, tuning, your climate control, and then your Super Track Pack. That brings up the launch control where you can basically quickly activate it, and then you can go to your performance pages. Sport turns on sport, the traction control into sport mode, stiffens up the steering, the transmission, you can see it puts a checkered flag right in that corner there to let you know you're in sport mode. The rest of this cabin here, you have decent storage, good cup holders here, a little more storage there. The center console here is a decent size. Your USB, your SD card, your aux port, a power outlet is all buried in there so you can hide your stuff. My tester is missing a sunroof. It makes the cabin very dark, especially with this black interior. I would prefer to have the $1,000 sunroof upgrade. The glove compartment is lined with felt, surprisingly, damped. It has 2-tier storage. It's not bad. The controls here look very cheap and old. It doesn't even have LED lighting. So again, this is an area where you're going to notice this car is an older design. Now, overall, I really don't like the interior of the Challenger. It's my least favorite out of the muscle cars. So really, you're going to be buying this car for the motor and for the retro design theme that you get when you purchase a Challenger. One thing I really want to quickly complain about, I hate the location of the door handles. I don't know why they're up here. Why they're not up here. They should be up there. It's just down here. It's super annoying to use. It's something you have to get used to. Now, even though the Challenger is the largest vehicle, its back seat, surprisingly, is still completely, you know, reserved for kids. Now, the Mustang and the Challenger also have pretty terrible back seats, but getting back here, you have to slide the seat forward. The seatbelt you can take out of this little holster right here so it doesn't get in your way, which let me do that really quick if I can get the damn seatbelt out. Now, doing that, you can see getting back here is not that terrible. And I do find that the legroom is actually better than the Mustang and the Camaro. This car does give you the most usable space in the back. Headroom is also not bad. I'm pretty short though, I'm only 5'7". There's a nice armrest back here. The materials are all hard touch, although down here it is surprisingly leather padded, so that's nice. You do have dual map pockets and then vents back here. So again, if you do need to actually use a usable rear seat for, you know, relatively average height people, the Challenger is basically the one you have to get since it is the biggest car. Now, opening up the trunk of the Challenger, you can see because this is the biggest car, it also has the biggest trunk. It measures, I think, around like 13 cubic feet of space, so it's really, really usable. The opening, surprisingly, could be a little bit larger. I mean, there's a lot of space right here that they could have used to make the opening larger, but it all has to do with the rear end design. You can see the seats do fold down in a 60-40 manner, so that's nice. It expands your cargo capacity. Now, looking underneath this floor right here, there is no spare tire. Instead, you just have a fix-a-flat kit, so and that could be a concern if you guys don't want a spare tire, and you can see the battery's also been placed back here as well. underneath this huge, long hood, this is the whole reason why you buy a Challenger Scat Pack or a Challenger in general. This is the biggest motor in the segment. It's a 6.4 liter or 391 cubic inch, for those of you who want to go old school, V8 with variable cylinder management actually when you get the 8-speed automatic. Now you can see here it's a very nice looking motor. The air intake runners for me are just very nicely finished. I like the HEMI orange block that you can see down there. That's very, very old school, very traditional. I mean, this whole car it just reeks with that heritage, and that's something that a lot of people definitely like. Now, this motor is actually new, as a newer motor. I believe they introduced it in 2013. It pushes out 485 horsepower in this particular application and 475 pound-feet of torque. Now, that is more than what you get in a Camaro and a Mustang by a pretty significant margin. Now, the Challenger is the heaviest of the three. It weighs about 4,200 pounds. Rear drive only, of course. There's no all-wheel drive on this car, and you can take your pick between a 6-speed manual, which is what you purists probably want, or that 8-speed Torque Flight automatic, which is a new transmission last year. Very good transmission. We'll get out on the road later on. Now, fuel economy is actually not terrible when you go for the 8-speed auto. It's rated at 15 in the city and 25 on the highway. Manual, it drops like 2 mpg. You can credit that with the 8-speed and the cylinder management system, where this vehicle will run on 4 cylinders if it needs to. Now, this car does recommend premium gas, and I probably would say put it in there because it'll significantly reduce the performance if you put regular gas in. Now, of course, this is only one of 4 motors. There's a V6 at the base. There's a 5.7 HEMI V8, which has like 110 less horsepower. And then, of course, at the top of the chain, there's the 6.2 Hellcat supercharged HEMI V8 with 707 horsepower. That's another review, but let's get out on the road and see how this combination all works, shall we? So after driving the new Mustang, the new Camaro, I have to say those two I always thought are basically the tops in terms of this performance muscle car category. I haven't driven the latest version of the Challenger until now. When I drove that 2010 and 2013 model, they definitely feel way far behind in terms of performance, in terms of feel, versus the new Mustang and Camaro. However, this new one with the 8-speed auto, the refreshed design, I definitely think it has its place in the muscle car segment. And this new 8-speed automatic, when I first put my foot down, really surprised me. It has a very nice noise. It has the most horsepower in the class, so you do have the bragging rights when you go for this. So let's see how it all works out on the road. Oh yeah. So if you guys like a really tail-happy car, the Challenger is the one to get. I mean, Dodge purposely put these stupid, skinny little 245 Goodyear all-season rubber, and this car is begging for stickier tires, basically. It's it's a pretty tail-happy car, and it can be a little bit scary if you guys aren't used to the how tail-happy this car is. Now, the 8-speed auto, I'm definitely noticing, is a huge improvement over the 5-speed autos that you got on the earlier ones. It shifts super quick, it's super smooth. It really keeps the engine in the meat of its power band. I mean, this is an engine that has torque for days. It's got power everywhere. It revs nice and fast. It has a 6,000 RPM Redline, which the transmission will let it shift right at that point. And you're really going to enjoy going very quickly in a straight line with this car. It's a very, very, very fun car to drive. Now, you know, back roads like this aren't the Challenger's best place to test it. I mean, this is a car that feels like a boat. I mean, it's roughly about 10 inches longer than all of its competitors. So this is not a very easy car to drive on tight roads. And you're also going to notice the visibility in here kind of sucks, especially when you're trying to look both ways. And the blind spots are really big on the seat pillars here. I love that crackle, that bark. That is, oh, I love the exhaust on this car. It's perfect. It sounds phenomenal. There is no replacement for displacement. And the Challenger, especially with the 6.4, reminds you of that every day when you go down the road. Now, regarding the steering on this car, it's an electric power steering assist system, which I believe is new for 2013 when they introduced the new motors. I'll have to double check that. The Hellcat actually still has hydraulic power steering. I haven't driven that model, but I can say that the electric power steering in this car is surprisingly good. It weighs up nicely. I've got it in its sports setting here. It feels artificially heavy. It does feel a little bit dumb. I mean, you never forget that you're piloting a huge and heavy car when you're driving this thing. The suspension has a pretty good amount of body lean. The ride quality is much better though. It has a very nice controlled ride. You can easily take this on a long trip if only the seats were better for me. I think the seats are absolutely terrible, but oh yes, oh my god, that sounds fantastic. I love that sound. And if you have to ask me which motor sounds better, this or the Camaro, oh my god, that sounds so sexy. I couldn't tell you. The Camaro sounds pretty damn good as well, and it has that same bark. Really, Ford has been left in the dust with the base GT's motor not sounding quite as good as these, so I hope Ford eventually will offer some kind of factory performance exhaust similar to what Chrysler and GM does, because this is just fantastic. Oh! Now, when you get this going, when it actually finds some traction, this car will get to 60 in 4 seconds, which is quick. It's roughly in line with the Camaro and the Mustang. Despite having, a little bit more power, this has more weight, so you have to, take that into account. But it's just an incredibly fun, charismatic car that's just filled with a lot of character and heritage, and that's something that that you may be looking for, that the Mustang and the Camaro may not deliver as well as this Challenger does. So that's easily a reason why you may want to pick this. Oh god, that sounds good. Ooh, that sounds really good. I like me likey. This is nice. I have to admit, this is pretty nice, guys. Even when I have it just in its regular drive mode, not in sport, the back end steps out so easy. I'm not even trying to make the back end step out, and I just put my foot down just a little bit more to accelerate, and the back end steps out. The traction control is always grabbing at it. So you may want to go for, stickier tires as soon as you buy this car, unless you really like a tail-happy car. Some people like a tail-happy car, and good for them. For me, I don't particularly like it. I prefer the way that Camaro felt. When you put your foot down, it just put the power down so well, and that's something that I particularly like. Now, driving the car normally, in everyday traffic conditions, the Challenger's not bad to drive. As I said before, the ride is good. The seats, I hate them. They're so uncomfortable for me. But the visibility in here is definitely a problem. Now, my tester's missing the convenience group that gives you blind spot. I highly recommend going for that. The mirrors here are very, very small. The hood, pretty long. It's really hard to judge where the back end of this car is and where the front end of this car is. And the blind spot, when you look over your shoulder here, you can't see anything. So that goes with that, traditional muscle car sense. Is it worse than the Camaro? I'd say it's just as bad. The Mustang still has the best in terms of all-out visibility. So this may make you a little uncomfortable to drive. Combine that with the tail-happy nature of this car, and it's not for everybody. And that's one of the reasons why the Challenger is so good with enthusiasts, because you can't just give this car to your girlfriend or your mother or your partner or whatever and just expect them to drive this, especially if they're not car people. They're going to be super uncomfortable driving this car. It's fast, it's bright red, it sticks out, it's a cop magnet, basically, and that's the beauty of a muscle car like this. It's one of the reasons why you may choose a Challenger over some of its competitors. Now, coming to a couple of numbers here, fuel economy, that's probably something you're wondering about. Now, surprisingly, I got decent gas mileage figures in this car when I took it out on a long trip. I took it on a highway trip down to North Carolina, and I actually was able to get around 27 miles per gallon when you're driving it very, very conservatively. That's you not having your foot into it all the time, and the cylinder deactivation, which tells you in a fuel economy mode here when it's in 4 4-cylinder mode. Now, speaking of which, I did find the exhaust drone to be a little bit annoying for my ears on longer trips, and it makes a very weird noise when it's in 4-cylinder mode, a really weird 4-cylinder drone that goes away when the other 4 cylinders wake up. But that's just something to keep in mind, especially if you guys are planning to take this out on the highway very often. Now, I've been driving the car mostly city traffic now, and I've only been getting about 14.7. So that's right aligned with the 15 mpg that the EPA says this will do. This is a car that's requires a lot of discipline to keep your right foot under control. So you better do that, otherwise you're going to be dealing with a bunch of speeding tickets. Luckily, I did not get one while I had this car. Now, regarding the pricing of the Challenger, a base model SXT with the V6 starts at $26,900, which is actually a little bit more expensive than a Mustang, more expensive than a Camaro. The Challenger, of course, is the biggest, gives you the most space, so that's one reason why you may choose it. Now, if you guys want a V8 Challenger, it's going to cost you at least $31,000 for the RT with the smaller 5.7. That has a more manageable 375 horsepower, a lot less than its other American muscle car competitors. Now, the Scat Pack that I'm driving is the least expensive way that you're going to get almost 500 horsepower, 485. This vehicle starts at $38,995. That's a bargain, honestly, if you look at that that number with the amount of horsepower you get with this car. Now, my tester has the 8-speed automatic for $1,400. It's got the nav system for like another $900. My tester's stickers for just over $41. That's a freaking bargain considering how much power you get. Now, granted, my tester is missing a couple of options that I would like it to have. I'd like to get the Scat Pack appearance group that gives you HIDs, the badging around, the leather suede seats with the ventilated seats. That's like another $1,400. The advanced technology package, if you guys want that, that gives you adaptive cruise, rain sensing wipers, automatic headlights. That's a bargain at $400. The convenience group that gives you the blind spot, I'd recommend that. It's like another $400. I mean, you could easily load this car up to be around $50,000, which is more expensive than a Mustang, right in line with a Camaro SS that I showed you, that red one especially. So again, the Challenger has the value quotient, and don't forget about the Hellcat, which has 707 horsepower, a lot more than some exotic, super exotic cars, and that starts at $64,000. So, in typical muscle car fashion, this car has a lot of value for your performance dollar, basically. So it's one of the reasons why it sells well. Chrysler consistently sells between 50 to 60,000 of these every year, and it definitely shows. It's a very, very lovable car. Just not, I wouldn't say, the easiest car to live with. I mean, this is a really wide car that you can't really see out of. The gas mileage kind of sucks because it's hard to not put your foot into it when you're driving this thing, and I definitely prefer the V8. A V8 is the way to go. I'm not sure about the 6-speed though. I haven't driven the manual. The 8-speed is very good if you guys can't drive stick or don't want to. This is a great transmission, sounds great, it makes those crackling noises. So I would happily say if you guys need the automatic, the convenience of it, go for it. This is a really good transmission until I do drive the 6-speed manual Challenger Scat Pack. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview of the 2016 Dodge Challenger Scat Pack. Now, if you guys are wondering, what is Dodge is planning to do in the coming years, 2017 is actually a year that Chrysler just showed off the Challenger TA and the Charger Daytona. It's basically this motor or the RT's motor with fatter, stickier tires. The TA badging that dates back to the times when Chrysler entered the SCCA Trans Am Racing Series back in the 1970s. So it's premium with heritage. It has also a less restrictive, louder exhaust, as this car needs to get any louder. It already sounds pretty sexy when you guys get it going. So if you guys want to wait for that model will actually start going on sale next month, which I think has like a $2,000 premium over this regular Scat Pack, which honestly sounds it sounds so good. But anyways, if you guys are also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, keep subscribed to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.